XRP price prediction in 2025 and beyond. I'm going to lay it all out for you in this video. You've asked me so many times in my live streams. Well, here it is. I want to go through some facts and information before I get to the pricing so you can better understand my mindset. Let's go ahead and start here with Chad Steingraber posting the DTCC clears all the US stock market in full steam ahead on converting all securities into tokenized assets. We just got some new information from the DTCC last week. They are working with HBAR, XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tron, XLM. Those assets will be able to handle this on their patent. So it'll be really interesting to see what assets they choose. I would imagine HBAR, XRP, XLM are probably going to be the most used ones. I don't see a whole lot of tokenization of assets on Bitcoin, but I'm sure Ethereum will have its day as well. You have the CME Group, the leading derivatives marketplace for the entire world, just partnered with Ripple and to bring XRP onto the CME Group for derivatives. We know derivatives are a 600 trillion to a 1.4 quadrillion public market valuation. It is very difficult to get exact money on how much money is in these futures. Futures are derivatives, just so you're aware. And then you also have real world tokenization is accelerating, and the XRP ledger is at the center of driving institutional adoption. Think about all of the partnerships that Ripple currently has. They have those relationships with the banks and financial market infrastructures and payment companies all around the world. When Ripple comes to them with new products, they can trust Ripple to do the right thing. They understand Ripple is coming from a place of compliance and de-risking for the bank. That is why banks like Ripple. That is why Ripple is one of the biggest blockchain infrastructure companies in the world, and I believe they will be for the next 5 to 10 years the biggest. If they're able to acquire Circle, it is going to be all over but the shouting. And then here is the XRP ledger's volume that is starting to build up here. Just in the last few months, you can see it go from just a little bit. Now we're getting actually to $114 million here. You can see the T-bills are starting to grow. It's only 5 million, but imagine this is a treasury bills in the United States. There's a few different things here. So 28.6 trillion. There's also a total of all of these different treasury bonds and different corporate bonds, $50 trillion in the United States. Globally, $140 trillion. All of that value needs to find its way onto ledgers. And is it so crazy to think that the XRP ledger won't be primed? They're working with Ondo and BlackRock, right? They're working with Open Eden. This is something that you need to be paying attention to. And you also have Standard Chartered's SC Ventures invests in EU crypto derivatives. Standard Chartered, of course, is a Ripple partner. And then you have David Schwartz explaining why the XRP ledger is going to be chosen because it has a super DEX that was built into it at the time of its release. Let me play this.
One of the first things that we need is asset portability. That's not all of interoperability, but that's a big piece, and that's the piece we need now. And one
really quickly, tokenized financial assets, crypto native tokens, stable coins and digital currencies, and other real world assets. It's all coming on chain.
Possibility is the XRP ledger as a trading hub across blockchains with the DEX, the payment engine, pathfinding, the various different XRP ledger features that enable the movement of assets. In fact, one of the very first applications on the XRP ledger in the very, very early days was as a way to move Bitcoin faster and cheaper. Issued assets enable, remote assets that are based on different chains along with bridges. So I think that's an extremely important step towards interoperability, but it's just one piece. The industry has a long way to go. But if we want mass adoption, users are going to have great experiences. We have to solve interoperability problems. The XRP ledger could be a token bridge for asset portability, but that's not the whole solution.
Token bridge for asset portability. You also have the XRP ledger. It will be bustling marketplace volume and velocity via payments of real world assets, trading algorithms, GameFi, NFTs, MPTs, sidechain activity, etc., etc. Let me play this real quick. 44 seconds.
Naturally, we will find use for the Ripple stablecoin, the Ripple USD, in our own products and our customers as well. In custody, it's an ideal asset for settling trades of real world assets. In our payments product, we'll be using the Ripple USD alongside of XRP to provide more liquidity options in the payment flow. And the stable coins have already proven their value in the market as tools for on and off ramps. So this is a great way to get fiat onto the chain and leave it in an asset that is tied to the fiat currency until you're ready to deploy it for other uses. And similarly, a great way when assets are liquidated to be able to easily move the the funds around the world.
So,
naturally, we're finding.
You know what's really interesting? Once you can tokenize this value and bring it on chain, you can actually move this money around the planet really cheaply. And so these like hedge funds and all of these really big institutions, once the US market opens, they can move the liquidity into the US market, do all the trading they want. And then when they want to go into like the Japanese market or the London market, they can just go with the timeframes, move that value over instantaneously and start to use it. You couldn't do that with the current banking system. This will open up a lot of new areas and avenues. And I think people are sleeping on the amount of volume that is going to increase. Having a market that's only open from, 9 to 5 on the East Coast, and then 24/7, 365. I think that's a really big thing. And then you also have Ripple has 70 payout markets, and they cover 90% of the FX market. I've talked about this a lot on this channel. The FX market, 7.5 trillion a day, about 7.5 million transactions of $1 million, give or take. It's on average. If you're using the Swift system, you could be charged 1, 3, 2, 3, 4% to move that value, or you could use Ripple and XRP and pay less than a penny. It's up to you, right? And also, guys, I want you to go to joincryptonaires.com if you are looking forward to getting your crypto career started. If you need help growing, if you want to be at a place where I'm sharing news and information, you have access to me, you can talk to me at any time. This is what you want to do. Join Cryptonaires. Go take a look at it today. There's going to be a link down in the description. I hope to see you around the community. So let's go ahead and get into this. So, all right. What is your price prediction for XRP over the next 1 to 5 years? So I wanted to ask the AI, what is your price prediction for XRP? And so it gave you a bunch of information here. It's like 180 to 440 in 2025. Doesn't really take into consideration ETFs and, long-term $6 to $12, 15 to 29, not taking in tokenization into a factor or anything like that. And so I wanted to better understand this as what is, your price prediction for XRP if it used 10 to 50% of the Swift volume. So in a case where Swift, was basically inept and couldn't move the volume and Ripple had to step in and take a big part of it, what would be the prices for XRP if they were able to do this? And so it says Swift processes 5 trillion a day, 1.25 quadrillion annually, and it gives me some numbers here. So 125 million annually is 25 bucks. Alternative forecast $100 to $1,000. If it all depends on circulating supply and a few other factors. And then it's 50% of Swift's volume would be, 129 up to, $500 into $1,500 for bullish speculative. And then FX market, I wanted to better understand that. And it gave me some information here. Theoretical price about $3,247. And, that was some good information, but I also asked ChatGPT the same questions and it actually gave me lesser numbers. And so I just want to see what these AIs are thinking, because we are the ones who pump all this information to AIs. And so it's interesting to hear what they have to come up with. So looking at this year, 2025, my price predictions, here we go. The XRP spot ETF, okay? If that is approved in 2025, what would we be looking at if we got some value to flow inside of the XRP ledger? So if we're looking at 5 billion, 10 billion, or $20 billion coming in, remember there is a multiplier effect with value coming in. We've seen so many instances of, $15-20 million coming in and affecting the market cap $5 or $10 billion. So if we added real liquidity, 5 billion, 10 billion, 20 billion, where would we be with a 1x, 25x, 50x, and 100x multiplier? And so here is the numbers: 5 billion, 10 billion, and 20 billion with 1x to 100x. In 2025, if we're able to get 5 billion, this is what the prices would look like. And this is what I believe XRP could get to. Now, if there was a massive supply shock for XRP, this could exacerbate this number. It's making this number even more massive than it is right here. Obviously, we're not into the tens of thousands of dollars, but I think this could be a really good run for people. $100 to $200 would be best case scenario that I think in 2025 for XRP. Now, if we're talking about, all of this money coming in and tokenization starting to happen, and you're starting to see trillions of dollars coming on chain in 2025, these numbers would drastically change and go into the thousands, in my personal opinion, because the XRP ledger, now that the SEC has moved on, we understand that they are just trying to end the case. They're meeting tomorrow, which is Tuesday. You might be watching this video on Tuesday. The SEC met today, so look out for some content about that. But I think you can see some really, really good numbers here. And then, of course, you got 10 billion and 20 billion. At 20 billion at 100x is 240. When I did all of these examples of a market cap multiplier, I actually found the average was about 50x to 212x was the average I was finding, how much money coming into the market, the XRP, and how much the market cap would go up. And then I wanted to better understand a little bit more. I said if there was a supply shock and exchanges didn't have XRP, and it started to give me some interesting data here. And I wanted to go over this with you to see what you thought about this. It says reduce sell side pressure. Exchange held XRP dropped to about 2.7 billion tokens, about 2.7 monthly decrease, the lowest level since March 2025, which it sounds like people are buying XRP off exchanges and moving them off. Whale accumulation and cold storage withdrawals have been removed. 3 billion XRP from trading platforms, limiting immediate liquidity for sellers. Escrow lockups amplify scarcity demand. So if we had more escrow locks up for XRP, that could help with supply shock. Demand supply imbalance. If you listen to Jake Claver, he believes that there's a massive supply shock. You could see a $3,000 XRP in 2025, which would be pretty insane. But then I also wanted to better understand what XRP's price could be in the future. And this is the information I'm about to go over. So please buckle in, sit down, and let's learn something together. I love that. Global stock market, 124 trillion. In 2025, all right, you have 128 trillion to about 140 trillion. The number, of course, changes depending on the day. The derivatives market, of course, is 600 trillion to 1 quadrillion. I've seen the number as high as 1.4 quadrillion, so it's somewhere in that matter. This is a public market, not the private market. Remember, the private market, we don't know how much money is actually in there. I guess we don't know how much money's in the public market, but we have a guess. And then here is what we are looking at. If 5%, 10%, or 15% of this value up here winds up on the XRP ledger with a 25x, 50x, and 100x multiplier, where is that going to put us on price? And so here you go. Price per XRP at different adoption levels: 5% adoption, 125, 10% adoption, 250, 15% adoption, 375. And I said with market cap multipliers, so this is with no multipliers. And so if you have a 25x multiplier, you'd be looking at a $9,375 XRP. With a 50x multiplier, you'd be looking at an $18,000 XRP, and a 100x multiplier, you'd be looking at a $37,500 XRP. Okay. Now this is with 15% adoption. So even if Ripple only gets, let's say, 5% of the market, which is 1/20th of what's out there, okay, you would be looking at still, depending on the multiplier, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars still for XRP. It's not crazy. I think this is a very real possibility. A lot of people said Bitcoin would never go to, $1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000, yet we're seeing Bitcoin at $100,000, making, millions of a percent gain. Why couldn't something with real use case adoption and connections to institutions not do even more insane numbers? And I think you will see XRP doing just that. And you also have to understand, right? Ripple, Google Ventures, CME Ventures, Anderson Horowitz, Seagate Technology, Boston Consulting Group, SBI, Standard Chartered, Banco Santander, Accenture, right? CGI. There's so many institutions connected within Ripple and XRP. And so this is just showing the connections at the bottom of the screen here. Everything I just read for you. Don't really need to go through that too much. I did want to show you this. Ripple joins the ISDA, which is another derivatives platform. And there's other tokens that are in the ISDA, HBAR, Algorand, a bunch of others. So just please keep that in mind. You also have CME Group. We did talk about this a lot. They just announced this the other day, which is really, really incredible. You also have Robinhood. Getting into it, we have the Graham Rodford, CEO of ArcX, saying that he believes $30 to $50 trillion on the XRP ledger over the next few years. Like, this is just one person building on the XRP. This is one company building on the XRP ledger, and this guy thinks 30 to 50 trillion. Right? This is not me saying it. This is somebody that's actually involved in all this, making public statements. This guy is not crazy. I've seen him speak on so many different occasions. He's not insane. He really believes that you're going to see all of this value on chain in the next few years.
30 to 50 trillion, all on XRP, all trading on Artex.
All right. Then you also have Robinhood and Bitstamp drive XRP ledger to $1 quadrillion derivatives market. Robinhood has a plan. They want to get into the Asia markets, Middle East markets, They did that. They went ahead and bought Bitstamp. Now you have this.
And if you think about a business or an institutional investor, they also want access to the things we offer. You know, they want 24-hour access to the equity markets and want industry-leading margin rates, a great customer experience. So over time, I do think you'll see us branching more out into serving other types of customers, not just retail, but also businesses and institutions. And, you know, to that end, we announced an acquisition of Bitstamp, a global crypto exchange. One of the things
They paid $200 million for Bitstamp because Bitstamp has all these connections in all of these other countries, and Robinhood wanted those connections.
that's very attractive about that business is that it's not just international, but also institutional. Gets us access to an entirely new customer base that
It's also institutional. That is what they're looking for here.
we're not directly serving today. I think we can do more and more of that over the next 10 years.
We are launching our own derivatives exchange in the next few months, so that's something we are most excited about and really hope to cooperate closely with Ripple there as well. In final stage of integration of really some top 30 commercial banks globally on Bitstamp as a service, so these commercial banks will offer crypto through Bitstamp. So that's definitely something we are very proud of.
All right. And then last but not least, you have XRP derivatives on Coinbase. Now, going back to the price in 2025, if everything goes extremely well, I don't see why we couldn't go into, you know, the high teens or maybe even 3 digits for XRP price. I am not as bullish as some other people saying that we could get to, you know, $1,000, $2,000 or $3,000 in 2025. I would love to be wrong. It's a lot. It's a lot. You would need to bring in, you know, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars on the XRP ledger, or have some massive supply shock where only like 1 or 2%, you know, circulating for some reason. Listen, I get it. We all want to be rich from crypto. I just think this is going to take time. Just trying to be, you know, transparent with you here. I think that we would be lucky to see $15, $25, $30 XRP here in 2025. And in best case scenario, maybe, you know, $100, $200. Worst case scenario, we could go back down to 50 cents. Let's be honest here. You know, there's really nothing stopping. If the SEC continues the case, or something else happens, or if there's a glitch, or if there's a hack or something like that, it could all fall apart tomorrow. We don't know. But we are entrusting, you know, ourselves with the Ripple team and the devs teams that work on the XRP ledger to update it and keep it, you know, in the pristine condition that it is. 2.8 million is how much money I was able to make in the crypto market in 2021 with help from my community and, of course, my close friends. Never in my life ever before have I even come close to making $1 million, let alone almost 3xing that number. I was able to do this because I quickly understood the crypto market and where to get valuable information before everybody else. The key to the crypto market, if you haven't learned this already, is to be early and to only get into real utility projects that will stand the test of time. There's a lot of really important DeFi and tokenization on real world asset projects that are going to be here over the next 5 to 10 years that are going to just explode in price. And we have that information that I'm sharing every single day with you inside of Cryptonaires. If you want to take your journey in crypto to the next level and you want to make insane amount of money, you need to first understand what you are doing in the space and where to find the best information. If you can start doing that, you can make some big changes in your life in the crypto space.